Focus Forward, I have award-winning author, global workforce innovator, and keynote speaker, Laura Goodrich with me. Laura, I am so happy to have you here today.
And I'm happy to
so
be here.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm here today. We want to focus on Laura's book, Seeing Red Cars, which is not only a book, it's also a movie, and it's a methodology, and it's very, very exciting. So Laura, tell us about this book.
Well, you know, I'll start off telling you about the film because I'll tell you what, we always tend to do things a little bit backwards, it seems. So we came to the marketplace with a film called Seeing Red Cars. And where it came from was this. I mean, I always say to people, you get more of whatever it is that you focus on. It's kind of like when you buy a red car. You buy a red car, and what do you notice? Red cars. Isn't that funny?
Exactly. Once I was looking for a sofa, and every single thing I saw, I was watching TV, there it was a sofa. I just constantly focused on those sofas.
Right. So whatever you're focusing on really becomes more apparent and is really front and center and becomes like a target. So I've always felt that to be the case. But what I found is that when working with clients, I'm going to give you some context, is that most of my work is with clients that are experiencing really significant change. So when I start working with them, I would say, tell me about this change from your perspective. You know, I would want to get their view of things, and then I would say, what do you want? And without a moment's hesitation, they would tell me everything that they didn't want, all the things that they were hoping to avoid. And if I tease that out a little bit, it would be clear that they'd been in their head thinking about this a lot. In fact, they had a lot of depth on all that they were hoping to avoid. So coming back to that point, you get more of whatever it is you focus on. What it turns out is that unconsciously, people focus on what they're hoping to avoid, and that becomes a target of sorts in their mind, and it really sets them up for circumstances that are exactly opposite of what they would like.
You know, it's really interesting that you should mention that because I have a program that I take clients through, and the basis of my program is to figure out exactly what the client is, A, skilled at, and B, passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that most people, when I first start that exercise with them, they'll tell me what they're not good at. And I said, no, we're not talking about what you're not good at. We're going to focus on what you're good at. It's very difficult for them to come up with more than 5 things that they're good at. Isn't that interesting?
And that's exactly this concept at play. That's exactly what that is. That's how we've been conditioned to focus our energies and efforts. What don't I want to have happen? How can I guard the world from seeing these areas of weakness? And we put a lot of attention on it, and then we don't have the clarity about those areas of strength that we have. We don't have the clarity about really what we're driving toward. And if you look at it just from the simple concept of a target, without a target, how would we be able to accomplish anything? The important piece with this that I always want to call out is that it's unconscious. So this isn't about negative people. I mean, truthfully, it isn't. It is about an unconscious focus that is very, very prevalent and really has an impact in our lives.
Okay, so when you're talking about that, I open up your book, I start reading the book, and there it is, 12,000 to 50,000 thoughts a day. Okay, that's the average person has those. Mm-hmm. Okay, and those thoughts are 70% of what we don't want? 70% subconscious thoughts of what we don't want?
That's right. 70% of our unconscious thoughts are focused on what we don't want to have happen. And think of it like this. It's those simple things. Unconsciously, we're focusing, gosh, I sure hope I don't lose my keys. I hope this isn't an unproductive meeting. I really hope that Joanne doesn't drone on and drone on in this meeting. We focus unconsciously on what we don't want to have happen. And it's very, very prevalent, and it gets worse. It gets worse in the fact that
How could it get worse?
I'll tell you why it gets worse. Because we're creatures of habit. Uh-huh. So we have a tendency to think and act and behave very similar day to day. We sit at the same spot at the dining table, drive the same way to work. Mm-hmm. Our thoughts, actions, and behavior have a tremendous amount of repeat in the mix. So we're unconsciously focused on what we fear. We don't know that it's going on. And one of the things that I found absolutely true is that people don't recognize it until it's brought to their attention. And then they go back into their world and their life, and they always tell me that it's kind of like watching a car accident happen, because they begin to sort of see it in not only in themselves but in others, and recognize how prevalent and truthfully how damaging it is.
So in some of the work that I've been doing with Jack Canfield, what he says is, in order to make that change, what you have to do is first you have to recognize that it's a negative thought, and then you have to replace it with the positive counterpart of that. So in looking at that, the most important thing is to be aware of it. So how can somebody become aware of that they're having these negative thoughts? Because I think most people, they're not even aware that they're doing that.
Right, and so that's an excellent point to bring up. Think about anything that you've ever done unconsciously. It's there, it happens. If you've ever observed a child trying to stop sucking their thumb, I mean, they have it in their mouth before they realize that it's a challenge.
It's like me with candy.
Indeed, right? Right, it's funny that you mention it, because I was just speaking with someone and she said, you know, it just happens. So it's very automatic. First of all, you know, the awareness is key. Second of all, we have to keep that awareness in front of people long enough so that they can actually engage in that behavior that's going to develop new pathways in their brain, new neural pathways that are paved just like those unconscious pathways. So that's critical. So here's a really good point, is when we were writing about this concept, when we were preparing for the film, before it was titled, we were coming up with all kinds of titles, and we really were struggling at finding the right title. And one day, our partners at Star Thrower came in and said, how about seeing red cars? You know how that is? When you buy a red car, you notice red cars. Well, we knew immediately that that's what it needed to be, because that in and of itself, that metaphor, makes it much more memorable. Because, you know, again, it's that unconscious thinking, so we've got to have things that we can get up front and center to create that conscious awareness. So that's a starting place. The next step that we do, and when we bring people through the methodology, because with the book, there is a digital toolkit and a series of tools that people go through that are really designed to get that neural network lined up and make it a lot easier to stay there. And these are all the things that I learned in writing the book that I otherwise wouldn't have known.
So wait a minute. The book has a companion piece that is, it's a kit maybe?
We call it a toolkit.
A toolkit.
It's a digital toolkit.
A digital toolkit. So is that for the general public that they could purchase?
Actually, it's free for download. It's at seeingredcarsbook.com. And you can go and download it, save it to your desktop, type into it, make modifications as time goes on, and continue to update it.
So what kind of things are included in that toolkit?
Well, in the toolkit is the very systematic approach and means by which to develop this thinking and neural network that will ultimately create a dense neural network in our brains that makes it a lot easier to do this. The longer that people have developed this intentional focus, guess what? It's a lot easier, right? Because you have that neural network that's been established. Now, getting to that place definitely takes time and effort. And this is, I always say to people, there's no easy button. I mean, we love those commercials that say, okay, you're gonna lose 25 pounds in the next 5 minutes, but
eating everything you want, no exercise, don't you love it?
It's just ridiculous, and it really definitely does take effort. So we created this toolkit to go along with the book, and frankly, that has been the most powerful companion to go along with it on many levels. From an individual level, people will go through that. And leaders are using the toolkit in their discussions with their employees throughout the year. So they have a clear sense of what are the greatest strengths, what are the greatest assets this person brings to the table, and what do they want and where do their priorities lie. So in the toolkit, those are the steps we take them down, is, you know, to begin the process of changing that thinking to the outcomes that we're looking for in situations small to large, while really leveraging our greatest assets. And ultimately, we bring them to refining their thinking and driving that down to a couple top priorities, both personally and professionally, which is an interesting piece. So in the beginning of the book, we really focus on the personal self and the well-rounded, everything from, you know, professional to finances to health and fitness. In the latter part of the book, we get into the professional self, looking at what do we want from the standpoint of how do we manage change or challenges or working with other leaders. And that's the interesting piece. And this is where organizations today are really struggling, because the economy has been so challenging, the marketplace has been so challenging, that this fear-based thinking has been really exacerbated and made worse. And so what company leaders are telling us, that it was problematic before, but post all of this turmoil, it's absolutely paralyzing them from moving forward when they need to.
So in your book, the interesting part of going into an organization and help them to institute change that I found really interesting was to focus on those individuals that were on the fence. That's what you say in there, and I said, this is fabulous.
Yes,
This
is an important piece. So and important to talk about this, because there are a couple things that happen. First of all, right now what organizations are doing is they're standing up and saying, here's where we're going, and let's all get excited. Well, the certain reality is that given all of this turmoil, people have really lost a sense of themselves. They've lost a very clear sense of where their greatest strengths lie, and they most certainly have lost a sense of what they want. They have settled, and they have had their head down, and they've been running for a long time. So to come up and share the company vision and mission is not particularly inspiring. It's not particularly empowering right now. We really propose you get back to the individual and help people get clear about where their greatest assets are, what they want to accomplish, and get them steady on their feet in that regard. And then really share the new direction. What is the vision of the organization? And in the same breath, help them define what they want professionally and with the organization, and in that order. So I always say that order matters. The order in which we talk about things matters. And to the point that you brought up, Lori, is who can we influence? So when we're changing direction, particularly when we're in times of change, I refer to this as a time of true transformation. 20% of any given group wants to be a part of it. I mean, they absolutely want to be a part of it. They want to roll their sleeves up and they want to be a part of it. 50% fall into the category of backseat sitters. They really don't know
Let's see how it's going to work out before we really get involved.
Yes.
How serious are they?
Yes, they're not sure how they fit in. They don't know how they might fit into this equation, and so consequently, they're in the back seat. And really what we want to do is to enable them to get into the front seat so they can get their hands on the wheel. So we've got 20% that want to be a part of the change, 50% that is just not sure, they're neither negative nor positive, and we've got 30%, we call those detractors, that fall into the category of henny penny, the sky is falling, the world is going to meet its demise at the hands of Facebook folks. They are critical, they are complainers, they have a tendency to be very verbal.
They weren't interested in the position of the company before because it didn't work. Now they're not interested in the change because it's not going to work.
Right.
They're just
exactly.
They're always in the same place.
Precisely.
And
exactly.
I think organizations kind of focus on those people, and they spend a lot of energy and effort and money trying to communicate and change them.
They do.
And in reality, that's the way they are.
It's
Remember
not
the
happening.
negative thoughts?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not happening. The truth is that when you've got someone who's leading a process and is a part of it, wants to be a part of it, and someone who is directly opposed to it, if they speak with one another, they speak at one another, not to, not with, in connection. So the greatest strength lies in knowing who those ambassadors are. Who are the 20% that are going to help you? Because I'm telling you, you're not going to do it alone.
So what this is sounding like to me is internal marketing.
It is.
Because you understand the people in your organization that are those people that are making it happen, those people that have influence and they communicate with others.
Indeed.
Getting to those people will be a lot more cost effective and a lot more efficient than trying to convince the naysayers.
Absolutely. The naysayers aren't coming. You're going to expend a lot of energy.
And hopefully they would go.
Some of them do, and some of them come around. One of the stories that I share is of a detractor, and I refer to him as George in my book. He was extremely negative, but he did a decent job at the task that he was there for. He was very resistant. And all the way along, and 3 years into a project, he was leading a tour. This happened to have been an advanced biomedical company, and leaders were sitting around the table, and we heard him step into the room where he's giving this demonstration, and he said, "I'd like to welcome you to our organization. I'm going to tell you how we do what we do. You see, we have a very intentional focus on the outcomes that we want. We individually know what we want. We as a team know what we want, and as an organization, we know what we want. And this is how we're able to overcome the obstacles we've encountered, and this is how we're able to create such great sales with our product." Now, this is 3 years where this guy was resisting us all along the way. Now, to your point, Lori, many people that were in that pattern of resistance in that timeline, they left. He didn't. So we ultimately came around, but I share that story for this reason: 3 years.
I know.
3 years. So it's good for us to know. But the biggest emphasis is find your ambassadors, who are your 20% forward-thinking people, who are the 50% that are more neutral. And the most powerful way is to engage them in dialogue, genuine dialogue and conversation about where things are going.
Okay, so when I'm hearing this, right away, the cash register is going in my brain. How much pushback do you get that organizations don't really have time for this, they don't have the money for this, they can't do this in-depth work? Couldn't they just put a Band-Aid on the cancer in the organization and keep moving? Do you hear that?
Here's the beauty of that, is that when we begin working with organizations, almost 100% of the time, they are experiencing near excruciating discomfort.
Okay, so they have pain.
They have pain.
They have so much pain that they have to fix the pain.
They've tried to advance a new direction, let's say a new initiative. They've tried to advance it. They've come across so much resistance. They are tired, they are worn out, and that's when we begin the conversation. Now, in a perfect world, it would be great if the conversation began earlier.
Absolutely.
But to your point, when they have experienced that type of excruciating pain, they tend to be really willing to dig in and to know that there's not a quick and easy fix, to know that it's a very lengthy process, and that they're going to need to stick with it over the long haul.
And be willing to change.
And be willing to change.
Be absolutely willing to change.
Right.
So your perfect client, if you will, that you're dealing with, have they lost market share?
Something has changed in their world.
Okay.
And I always say they need to find a new way on a new road. And there's various reasons. Yes.
With a little red car.
Yes, that's right. There are various reasons that might be. There are various reasons. It might mean, marketplace pressures. It might mean a new innovation that's come in to put the pinch on them. There's a lot of different reasons, but they need to find a new way on a new road. And it's critical to them. It's not nice. Oh, that'd be kind of nice. Wouldn't that be sweet? It's critical. It is absolutely critical to their success. If they don't successfully maneuver that transition, they're going to be in a heap of trouble. That's very frequently
So they're in
place.
a make or break situation.
They are.
They absolutely have to do something. And then how do they find out about you?
Well, there's lots of different ways. I mean, gratefully, there's a lot of word of mouth. And to the point, as I mentioned to you before, we released the film 3.5 years ago, and that has been internationally distributed in that period of time. And so there are lots and lots of people that have seen the film and shined a light on that unconscious focus. And so about 1.5 years ago, I received a call from Barrett Kohler, and they said, "How about writing a book?" And I had to think about it long and hard, truthfully, because I sort of didn't see myself holed up in my office writing a book. And I said, I have to come up with a very compelling reason to do this. And the very compelling reason I came up with, Lori, is this. Number one is that this absolute hot mess that we've been in for the last 3.5 years has stirred up this unconscious focus on fear. It has exacerbated something that was always there, and it has made it worse. And so we find ourselves in a place because of this market where companies are literally paralyzed, and that's precisely what leaders are telling us. This isn't problematic. We are paralyzed. I mean, we have a very compelling vision, but we can't get people off the mark because they're so fearful. That was my first compelling reason. And my bigger reason was I needed to, in the film, we shined light on this unconscious focus, but what we didn't do two other things. We didn't say, and we didn't get to the bottom of why it happens, and we did not get to the bottom of how to change it. How to take incremental, steps to change that and ultimately create a critical mass of people that have this disciplined thinking. And that's what we've been able to demonstrate in some really profound ways. And I'd love to share, there's a really exciting example of that. I have a friend that was doing leadership work with the film, the book, the toolkit. And he had a vice president of safety came to him and said, Tom, this is very interesting. Do you suppose we could do a safety leadership program using this methodology? Because think about it, in safety, we're focused on, we don't want to get sued.
Yes.
We don't want someone to get injured. We don't want. And so Tom used all of this methodology, put together a very comprehensive process in this manufacturing environment, and they have driven the incidence of safety issues of injury from 18 a year to under 2. And they're very committed to driving that to 0.
That's huge.
Isn't that huge?
That's huge.
It's huge. So they actually created a very collective way of thinking, first beginning with the individual, and then to the team, and then widening out to the organization. And those are the kind of results and outcomes they were able to create. And that's why we really focus on outcomes. And I'm really quick to say this is not a positive attitude program. It just isn't. It is a program focused on positive outcomes. And now you might say to yourself, well, isn't that positive attitude? Well, there's very real reason why I focus on outcomes. First of all, there is a portion of the population that is going to go into a collective eye roll when the whole conversation, right? When the whole conversation of attitude comes. So you have somebody going, attitude, that's just all fine and well, but I'm saving lives here. So our focus is on outcomes, on positive outcomes is very intentional. It's very intentional because no one will dispute a positive outcome. People will dispute a positive attitude. And while it plays a role in the mix.
Well, one is relative and the other one isn't.
Right.
I mean, that's the huge difference there. The other thing is, how many times have corporations brought in people, they do their dog and pony show, and nothing happens. The employees are saying nothing has changed. It's still the same. When you're focusing on a positive outcome, I mean, right there, you really focused on what needs to actually happen and stick.
Yes.
That's what that sounds like to me.
I'll tell you what, I'm really glad that you just brought up what you did, because this is something that we believe very strongly, and that is no movie or video, no 150-page book is going to create this change.
Or a 45-minute keynote.
That's not happening. Not happening. So we need to get honest with ourselves, and we need to recognize that standalone events yield a 5% retention.
Yep.
And we need to look ourselves straight in the eye and say, it's a great place to start. I will never, ever, ever say that not being together, that being together is not important, because it is. We're social beings, and we need to be together. It's a great place to start, but it is no place to stop. And that's why we feel so strongly, in this day and age, we can lean on the power of technology to keep the learning going and to space it over time. And so we started off with a film, and then we wrote the book and the digital toolkit. And I always say to people, every time I think I'm done, the marketplace comes back and says, not so fast. Mm-hmm. And so we had leaders coming back to us saying, we need more help. This is a very challenging process. So we created an advanced online experience that uses video, audio, written stories spaced over time that can be spaced over the course of 6 months or 12 months, bringing to people small touch points, 2 to 3 minute touch points in video, written, or audio form they get people back into the content, and then there's forums so they can interact with one another. So we believe a couple things. We believe you're not going to make change in an instant. You've got to space it over time. You need to give people the opportunity to collaborate with one another. So we believe peer-to-peer learning is a powerful way to really influence.
Well, that is fabulous. So what I'm interested in is, okay, people get the book, and then what? They go online, they download the information.
Buy the book, and you can actually, before you even buy the book, you can go ahead right now and download the toolkit at seeingredcarsbook.com. Download it and save it to your desktop. You can type right into it. Now, sometimes people will print it, but if they're like me, they'll likely lose a printed copy. So that's why we love having it on the desktop. And people really tell us that they're not losing it. It's actually, they can access it and they can use it in their conversations with their leaders and the like. So that's a super place to begin. And for those that are interested in previewing the film, you can preview that.
I would love
also.
to.
Yes.
I would absolutely love to.
Yes.
So I'm going to go home, and that's what I'm going to do, because I'm really interested in this work. This is a lot like the work that I'm doing with Jack Canfield and company there, and that's the Canfield Training Group. That's really interesting. And a lot of it is very similar in the positive attitude and also understanding our subconscious thought patterns.
Right.
I mean, that's really where it starts. When I work with clients, that's something that I'm really focused on doing, is helping them to understand what it is in their thought pattern that is keeping them stuck.
Right.
You know, keeping them stuck.
You know what I say, Lori? I always say either reckon with this or it will reckon with you.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
It's been a delight.
It was fabulous.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad that we were able to, but after trying for, I don't know how many weeks to get you here, because you're all over, we were able to bring you back here and get you talking, and the book, I'm so excited.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, I'm Robert Dempsey with your Tips from the Net. And today I want to talk about a Dream 100 effort. Now, I really wish I could take credit for this, but I can't and definitely won't. Dream 100 effort is a concept created by a man named Chet Holmes, who is also the author of The Ultimate Sales Machine, a book I highly recommend you get. Now, here is the concept behind a Dream 100 effort. As it sounds, you have the 100 top clients, businesses, affiliates, folks that you want to bring into the fold, folks that you want to work with. Now, these could be really big companies that are going to take some time to actually get, I guess the term is get in bed with. That would be a sales strategy, but I don't want to be kind of lewd here for the program. But, you know, people that you want to work with that are going to take a concerted effort to even get on the phone with or get a meeting with. So you start by creating this list of 100 or 50 or 25. If you can do 100, that's definitely the prime number there. And what you do from there is you create a long-term communication strategy. And by long-term, I mean 9 to 12 months, where you are sending them something every 2 weeks. Now, not just, you know, don't think just, okay, I'm going to send someone an email every 2 weeks. We got to go old school with it. So we're talking direct mail pieces. We're talking email, though, you know, CDs, all sorts of things. But every 2 weeks, you send this person something different with the express desire to get a meeting with that person. Now, the keys to this are to be strategic and be relentless. You need to plan every move, every individual piece that you are going to send, everything that you are going to put into the box and send to that person. So it might be like a little calculator, and your sales letter might talk about using the calculator to calculate the amount of savings that you're going to get for them. I don't know, that sounds kind of corny, but I think you get the gist. But anyway, so that's it. Come up with a list of 100 people that you want to work with. Create a 9 to 12 month communication strategy where you are sending them something every 2 weeks, and then do it until they cave and you get that meeting. So that's it, Dream 100 effort. Go to it. I am Robert Dempsey, and I will see you for our next tip.